The Roman Empire conquered half the known world with the might of its heavy infantry weapons. But here's what really baffles modern historians. Most of the time, the legionnaires weren't fighting anyone at all. Imagine the greatest army of antiquity, sitting for years in the dense forests of Germany without seeing a single real enemy. Hollywood movies show us endless bloody battles where soldiers fight to the death every single day. In reality, 90% of a Roman legionary service consisted of a tedious routine, mud, and hard physical labor. This sounds absolutely absurd for elite warriors, but it was precisely this monotonous daily life that made their legions invincible. A perfectly logical question arises: what did hundreds of thousands of armed men do when there was no one to fight? The answer will surprise you greatly, because their lives more closely resembled the hard work of modern shift workers in the far north. Roman commanders quickly realized that an army in peacetime was a veritable powder keg. A crowd of bored young soldiers armed with sharp weapons is far more dangerous to the state than any external aggressor. Therefore, the command devised a brilliant system of total physical activity so that the soldiers simply wouldn't have the energy left for mischief. Modern corporations call this aggressive team building, but Roman centurions simply handed out heavy shovels to the legionnaires. We're going to take a look right behind the scenes of the greatest military machine of the ancient world. You'll learn why elite infantrymen worked as ordinary laborers, why they grew cabbage, and how they gambled away their annual pay in dice games. We'll examine in detail their actual daily routine, the complex system of leave, and their strange relationship with the local population. It turns out that endless boredom and mundane idleness killed Roman legionnaires more effectively than the heavy swords of Celtic barbarians. By the end of this scenario, you'll clearly understand that the life of a Roman soldier is eerily similar to the daily routine of soldiers at modern military bases. Brace yourself, because the real history of ancient Rome is far more interesting than any fictional myths. Most people today are absolutely convinced that Roman soldiers slept fully armored and with their swords by their sides. But why keep a massive army on constant alert if actual wars only happen once every few years? Roman financial logic was extremely simple. A legion must provide practical benefits to the state every day, not just during rare campaigns. Maintaining a standing army consumed more than half of the imperial budget, so soldiers were simply required to earn their expensive rations. A modern, efficient businessman would call this approach resource optimization and an increase in the company's overall profitability. The Romans, however, simply believed that paying grown men to do nothing was an unacceptable and foolish luxury. A typical workday in a military camp always began long before sunrise. Why did they get up so incredibly early during a time of absolute peace, with no threat of attack? Because the scorching heat of the day on the empire's southern borders made any physical labor physiologically unbearable. Morning roll call and the distribution of work assignments took place in complete darkness, after which the camp instantly transformed into a vast, bustling hive of activity. Today, we often complain about having to get up early to be in a comfortable office by 9 in the morning. Roman legionnaires would have considered such a lenient schedule a truly relaxing vacation at an elite health resort. Forget about daily hours-long weapons training, as it's so vividly portrayed in modern movies. Of course, experienced veterans regularly maintain their combat fitness, but this took up only a small part of their endless workday. Most of their time was spent maintaining the massive infrastructure of the military camp, which was essentially a full-fledged city. Cleaning deep latrines, repairing leather tents, caring for horses, and chopping wood required the colossal efforts of thousands of strong men. Modern NATO bases are serviced by private contractors who do absolutely all the dirty work for professional soldiers. In antiquity, every legionnaire was his own cleaner, cook, lumberjack, and skilled repairman. Interestingly, a significant part of the day was taken up by endless paperwork and pure military bureaucracy. How could an ancient army be buried in paperwork without modern computers, spreadsheets, and laser printers? The legions kept maniacally strict records of absolutely everything, From every pound of grain issued to old sandals written off due to severe wear and tear, preserved wooden tablets reveal an astonishing level of detail, where every iron nail and every drop of sour wine is meticulously accounted for. Your modern chief accountant would simply burst into tears of joy upon seeing the perfect Roman quarterly inventory reports. The Romans invented strict micromanagement millennia before the advent of modern, tedious corporate standards. It is also worth mentioning the regular marches, which never ceased even in the most peaceful years. Why walk dozens of kilometers if there is no enemy in sight and no war on the horizon? Commanders knew full well that a soldier's legs forget the weight of the endless road much faster than his hands forget the weight of the sword. The legions undertook long training marches in full gear, carrying dozens of kilograms of various equipment. Today, professional athletes use expensive lead weights to create additional beneficial stress on their muscles. The Romans simply put on all their camping gear and went for walks in the rugged mountains until they were completely exhausted. Nightlife in the military camp was also strictly regulated, despite the complete absence of any external threat. Why did night sentries stand at their posts with the same fanatical rigor as during a real bloody siege? Discipline is like a muscle, and if you let it relax a little in peacetime, it will completely atrophy by the start of the war. Guards were regularly relieved to the sound of the water clock. An accidental sleep on duty was punishable by immediate public execution. In modern humane armies, such a transgression would land you in the guardhouse or simply result in dishonorable discharge. For the Romans, dismissal happened incredibly quickly, with extreme cruelty, and with the help of their comrades' heavy wooden clubs. Many clever soldiers received special staff assignments that permanently exempted them from hard manual labor. How could one legally avoid digging endless, deep trenches and cold night patrols? A massive army constantly needed literate scribes, clear-voiced trumpeters, experienced medics, and even priests who divined the future from the entrails of sacrificial animals. It was precisely this drab routine that crushed the naive young romantics who joined the celebrated legion in search of eternal glory and golden trophies. Can you vividly imagine their bitter disappointment when, instead of a heroic feat, they were solemnly handed a heavy iron hoe? This entire system was specifically designed to turn defiant individualists into faceless cogs in one enormous machine. The constant daily repetition of the same tedious actions burned away any dangerous thoughts of rebellion or disobedience. Today, corporate psychologists call this the methodical destruction of the personal ego to create ideal teamwork. The stern Roman centurions knew nothing of psychology, but instinctively did everything absolutely and frighteningly right. The greatest and most closely guarded secret of the Roman army is that they were brilliant professional builders. How did ordinary infantrymen become the leading and most sought-after engineers in the entire ancient world? The state simply could not afford to hire civilian workers to build massive stone bridges in the remote Germanic forests. So bored legionnaires built long roads, tall aqueducts, deep harbors, and even entire new cities from scratch. Today, the engineering corps of modern nations are engaged in similar useful projects around the world in devastated conflict zones. But the ancient Romans did this entirely by hand, without diesel excavators, relying only on muscle power and iron picks. The famous straight Roman roads, perfectly preserved to this day, were built by the calloused hands of weary army infantrymen. Why did military generals need to cover all of wild Europe with a gigantic network of first-class stone highways? A smooth, well-maintained road meant that a heavy legion could deploy its troops to any hotspot in the empire with unimaginable speed. Soldiers methodically cut down dark forests, drained vast swamps, and laid multi-ton stone blocks in mathematically perfect lines. Modern, expensive asphalt highways are often riddled with potholes and fall apart after the very first harsh winter or heavy rain. The roads laid by muscular men in leather sandals have been functioning perfectly for over 2,000 years. Building reliable permanent camps was another monumental daily task for the peacetime army. Why did a temporary tent camp gradually turn into a real, impregnable stone fortress on the border? If a legion remained at a single border for more than a year, the tents were replaced by sturdy wooden barracks and then by monumental stone buildings. Ordinary soldiers built spacious hospitals, large headquarters, amphitheaters, and huge dry granaries with double-ventilated floors. Building a modern, small residential complex requires the coordinated work of hundreds of contractors and months of paperwork. A Roman legion built a functional city for 10,000 rugged men faster than you can get a mortgage approved today. Cunning civil governors often officially borrowed legions to carry out ordinary municipal construction projects. Is it even legal to use elite shock troops to build an ordinary city fish market? Roman emperors actively encouraged this practice because good infrastructure developed the local economy and brought more taxes into the treasury. Tired soldiers worked on civilian construction sites, receiving a very modest monetary supplement to their regular pay. Imagine if a modern elite special forces unit spent their free time working in an organized manner to repair a heating pipeline in your residential neighborhood. In ancient times, this was an absolutely normal, routine, and extremely effective business process for the state. This endless, grueling labor also held a very deep, hidden psychological significance for the army's high command. Why were experienced generals so terrified of leaving their young subordinates alone with free time? A young man who has been hauling heavy stones for 12 hours straight under the scorching sun simply lacks the physical strength to organize a political uprising. Exhausting, monotonous labor was the most important and reliable tool for maintaining iron discipline and strict subordination within the troops. In modern, high-security prisons, inmates are also often forced to perform monotonous labor to control levels of internal aggression. Legionnaires were undoubtedly the elite of ancient society, but the command treated them daily as potentially dangerous criminals. So the next time you see a photograph of the majestic ruins of an ancient stone bridge, remember one important fact. Who actually stacked those huge, heavy stones into perfect semicircular arches over a turbulent and dangerous river? It was done by professional, hardened killers who had simply temporarily traded their short swords for trowels and iron chisels. Great Rome conquered the entire known world, not only because it knew how to ruthlessly destroy rebellious enemy cities. It triumphed forever because its soldiers could build their civilization much faster than the barbarians could burn it down. This gigantic construction machine ground down backward peoples far more effectively than any sharp cold weapon. In addition to their grand construction projects, the legionnaires were constantly engaged in an activity entirely unexpected for elite soldiers: large-scale agriculture. Why did the fearsome warriors of the great empire need to spend so much time digging in manure-soaked mud and planting ordinary radishes? Feeding an isolated base with 5,000 perpetually hungry, healthy men was incredibly difficult and catastrophically expensive for the treasury. Transport logistics in antiquity were very slow, and grain deliveries from the capital were often disrupted by autumn storms or forest bandits. Modern advanced military bases rely entirely on global supply chains and heavy cargo transport aircraft. The Romans had to become farmers en masse simply to avoid starving to death during the long, cold winter in the forests of Germany. Each fortified border camp was surrounded by a vast cleared area, officially called a prata by the Romans. How did ordinary soldiers successfully manage farmland the size of a decent modern provincial town? They grazed the army's livestock there year-round, harvested tons of hay for the cavalry, and actively grew seasonal vegetables. The soldiers worked in shifts in the fields with discipline, setting aside their heavy shields at the edge of the field before picking up a scythe. Today's peaceful summer residents often complain loudly about the hard work of tending potatoes on warm summer weekends. Imagine weeding long rows of crops with intense concentration, expecting at any moment an enraged German barbarian to leap out at you from the bushes. The legions regularly organized large-scale expeditions to the coast to supply the camp with a strategic stockpile of valuable food preservatives. Today's advanced food industry actively uses complex chemical additives to ensure long-term and safe food storage. The Romans used only their soldiers' sweat, blood-stained calluses, and thousands of tons of hand-mined gray sea salt. Gathering firewood every day required no less of a colossal effort from the legionnaires than preparing food. How many tons of dry wood do you think 5,000 people who bathe and cook burn every single day? The legions required enormous amounts of fuel year-round for hot baths, blazing forges, bread ovens, and winter heating of the barracks. Soldiers methodically and daily cut down hectares of forest, transforming wild, impenetrable thickets into completely bare, desolate wastelands. Modern environmental activists would be truly, genuinely horrified by the Romans' aggressive methods of land use. The army destroyed dense forests with the efficiency of a biblical locust swarm, leaving behind only smooth stumps and paved roads. The most hated and dreary task for many infantrymen was the regular summer collection of fodder for the horses. Why did the routine seasonal haymaking evoke such genuine hatred among incredibly strong and experienced veterans? Horses and pack mules required tons of fresh grass every day, which had to be gathered by hand across vast meadowlands. It was exhausting, monotonous work under the scorching southern sun, often far from the safety of the stone walls of their home camp. In our comfortable times, diesel fuel for heavy tanks is safely delivered in huge tankers directly to the military base. Infantrymen had to mow the biological fuel for the Roman elite cavalry with blunt sickles from early morning until late at night. Sometimes ordinary agricultural work took on the character of a full-scale ecological war. Why did the clever Roman commanders order their legionnaires to mercilessly burn the fertile fields of peaceful local residents? The total destruction of the enemy's harvest was the best way to guarantee victory in a difficult war without a single battle. If the savage barbarians lost all their grain reserves, they would inevitably have to surrender in disgrace or die a painful death from starvation in the winter. Today, such cruel methods are quite rightly considered war crimes and are strongly condemned by the international community. In antiquity, it was simply a very astute and mundane economic strategy devised by clever men in pristine togas. Proper management of such resources required the creation of an incredibly complex bureaucratic system within the legion itself. Who exactly ensured that all these grown vegetables, meat, and hay were distributed among the soldiers with absolute fairness? The army had an entire influential cast of meticulous accountants and storekeepers who constantly kept endless clay tablet records. They issued daily rations, ruthlessly wrote off spoiled food, and fined negligent soldiers for lost government-issued equipment. A modern, efficient manager of a massive warehouse uses laser barcode scanners and incredibly smart computer programs. An ancient Roman ensign got by just fine with a piece of wax tablet and a convincing threat to break your legs for stealing cabbage. This incredible farming lifestyle profoundly shaped the soldiers' mindset, turning them into extremely pragmatic stewards. How can a fierce warrior remain bloodthirsty if he spends half the day carefully watering the green onion beds? A Roman legionary understood very clearly the high value of human labor and had absolutely no desire to senselessly destroy what could be put to use. They methodically conquered new lands not to burn them, but to turn them into new fertile fields for their empire. American farmers today fiercely defend their vast lands with loaded pump-action shotguns in their strong hands. Roman farmers did exactly the same thing, but with an iron gladius and half the known world stood behind them. Between rare wars, a Roman military camp was always an incredibly bustling economic hub. Where on earth did all that money come from in a remote, dark forest on the very farthest edge of the civilized ancient world? Without exception, all legionnaires received a steady salary in silver coins, which automatically made them the richest people in the region. The massive amount of hard cash instantly attracted shrewd merchants, skilled artisans, and brazen swindlers from all over the area. Modern gold rushes always operate on exactly the same basic principle of attracting capital to wild places. Where there are thousands of bored young men with money, a whole powerful industry of entertainment and vice instantly springs up. Trade within the vast camp and just beyond its walls flourished, despite very strict official military regulations. What could soldiers possibly buy when a wealthy state already provided them with all the essentials for free? The standard army ration was incredibly bland, so the legionnaires bought up sweet wine, meat delicacies, and high-quality warm clothing in droves. Cunning local farmers quickly realized the opportunity and began growing produce specifically to suit the tastes of the wealthy Roman soldiers. Today, a neon town of noisy bars, cheap shops, and fast food joints instantly springs up near any major American military base. The ancient world worked exactly the same way, only instead of unhealthy burgers, they sold hot roasted piglets with garlic. Gambling for money was the greatest curse and the most insurmountable passion of the entire Roman army. Why did the strict command constantly turn a blind eye to this illegal, destructive, and very harmful activity? Playing dice allowed weary legionnaires to relieve their accumulated stress and kill their endless free time in some way. Soldiers sometimes gambled away entire fortunes, recklessly staking their future annual pay or valuable captured weapons. In today's boring barracks, young conscripts usually play cards for push-ups or very small amounts of pocket money. A Roman infantryman could easily lose in a single short evening an amount that would have bought a nice house back home. The problem of unpaid debts among soldiers sometimes reached absolutely catastrophic proportions for discipline. What happened to the unlucky legionnaire who, in a fit of excitement, owed his malicious comrades too much silver? Desperate debtors often tried to flee the camp or began actively stealing army property to sell it secretly to locals. Centurions cracked down on such behavior with incredible cruelty because bloody financial disputes destroyed the unity and trust of the brotherhood in arms. Today, civilized banks simply block bankrupt individuals' credit cards and officially file civil lawsuits against them. Ancient army debt collectors would simply beat the weeping debtor mercilessly with heavy sticks in the darkest corner of the wooden barracks. It is interesting that the Great Army officially functioned as a compulsory bank for its own personnel. How did the wise command try to save the foolish soldiers from their own incredible financial irresponsibility? Exactly half of every soldier's pay was automatically withheld and forcibly deposited into a special, guarded camp treasury. This vast sum of money was paid out to the veteran only after his honorable retirement, as a substantial lump sum pension. Modern state pension funds operate under an absolutely identical, tedious scheme of compulsory long-term savings. Roman generals invented a foolproof savings account simply to prevent soldiers from drinking away all their silver at once. Bribery and petty corruption among lower-ranking officers were absolutely normal and commonplace. Why would a simple rank-and-file legionnaire give silver coins to his stern, battle-scarred commander? Money was generously paid for exemption from very dirty work, an unscheduled day off, or a safe transfer to an easy daytime patrol. There was also a completely legal small business operating within the infantry unit itself during off-duty hours. How could enterprising soldiers legally earn extra money off their own comrades in arms? Skilled craftsmen, for a few coins, repaired torn boots, sewed new tents, or decorated their fellow soldiers' dull weapons. In essence, a vast shadow market for everyday services operated within every legion, completely untaxed by the empire. If, in a modern, well-lit office, you ask a colleague to fix your broken laptop in exchange for a nice cup of coffee, you're doing the same thing. The Romans simply pragmatically monetized absolutely any of their everyday skills to buy a little more good wine in the evening. A particularly rare and incredibly expensive item in a soldier's expenses was rare letters and private delivery services. How could a homesick soldier contact his family while being thousands of kilometers away from sunny Italy? In the vast empire, there was simply no free public mail service, so packages were sent via traveling merchants for a hefty fee. Archaeologists constantly find very touching letters from legionnaires, tearfully begging for warm socks or a little pocket money. A modern soldier simply pulls out his smartphone and video calls his mom completely free of charge from the farthest corners of the world. A Roman soldier paid half his salary for a letter that took 6 months to arrive and might have simply rotted in the courier's bag along the way. Medical care in the military camp also had its own hidden and very lucrative economic side. Did soldiers really have to pay for the treatment of their battle injuries out of their own meager pockets? Basic arrow extraction was free, but for clean bandages and better food in the hospital, they had to pay a hefty extra fee. Cunning military doctors could make a surprisingly good living by selling healing ointments or special pain-relieving syrups made from poppies. Modern private health insurance also loves to charge exorbitant fees for extra soft pillows in a private room. Roman doctors knew full well that human health is always the best and most expensive commodity on any market. As a result, a massive military camp turned into a completely closed, self-sufficient financial ecosystem. Where did the colossal sums of imperial gold, brought annually into the remote German border forests, vanish without a trace? Hard cash circulated from the command to the soldiers, then to the merchants, and from them, back to the local imperial tax collectors. The legions were not only a formidable military force, but also the most powerful driver of the entire backward regional barbarian economy. Today, the massive American military bases in Europe function as anchor enterprises for many small local communities. Ancient Rome was the first to realize that a sharp bayonet in a shiny coin conquered the world far more effectively than a bayonet alone. A dirty civilian settlement, called a canabi, sprang up incredibly quickly around every permanent Roman camp. Why did the locals, instead of hiding in fear from the armed occupiers, settle right up against their high walls? The legion was the safest place in the entire troubled region, and the main source of enormous financial income. Cunning merchants, skilled artisans, beautiful prostitutes, and soldiers' families built their ramshackle homes right up against the deep military moats. Today we use fancy terms to describe this as ancillary infrastructure, which inevitably springs up around any large enterprise. The Romans contemptuously called it a parasitic town, without which the mighty army simply could not function properly. The most difficult and controversial issue in relations with the locals has always been beautiful young women. How was the delicate matter of personal life resolved for thousands of healthy men, isolated from their homes for long periods? Officially, young legionnaires were strictly forbidden, under threat of punishment, from marrying until the end of their 20-year service. The government sincerely believed that a soldier with a family became too cowardly and thought more about his children than about his military duty. Modern greedy corporations also strongly dislike it when parental leave prevents their employees from working overtime at night. The Roman emperors solved this complex demographic problem in the simplest way possible, by making all marriages illegal at the legislative level. But it is utterly impossible to overcome the powerful human nature with any strict military regulations or orders from a distant capital. What actually happened when a young soldier met a charming local girl from a neighboring forest village? They simply began living together, had a bunch of children, and ran a household together completely openly, right by the camp walls. The commanders were perfectly aware of these illegal families and simply turned a blind eye to them in order to maintain peace in the garrison. This is a classic historical example of how insanely strict laws are always offset by the complete lack of enforcement. The state pretended that soldiers' families did not exist, while the soldiers stubbornly pretended that they were lonely, sad bachelors. The complex legal status of such illegitimate families constantly created enormous legal problems for everyone involved. Who were the legionaries' young children, born to a local woman outside of a recognized legal marriage, officially considered to be? Under strict Roman laws, they were completely illegitimate and had no right to citizenship or their father's financial inheritance. Only after an aging legionnaire retired with honors could his long-standing marriage be retroactively recognized as legal. In today's tolerant world, so-called common law marriage has long been the absolute norm and is reliably protected by the laws of most countries. In ancient times, your beloved wife and biological children were legally nothing to you for a full 20 years. The global mixing of different cultures occurred precisely because of these hidden, illegal family ties. How did the wild, barbaric provinces gradually, year after year, transform into civilized and submissive Roman territories? Legionnaires slowly taught their local wives proper Latin, and their children grew up in the symbiosis of two completely different worlds. Local recipes gradually found their way into army cauldrons, while advanced Roman technologies made their way into the dirty local villages. It was an incredibly powerful process of cultural assimilation that worked far more effectively than any government propaganda program. The conquest of the world took place not only through mass bloody killings, but also through mixed marriages and thousands of shared children. Of course, relations between the rough soldiers and the local population were far from always peaceful and idyllic. What happened when an incredibly drunk, armed legionnaire started a bloody brawl in a local wooden tavern? The army command always fiercely defended its men, often completely ignoring the just complaints of beaten civilians. There was a strict rule that military personnel were tried only in closed military courts, where civilians had no chance of obtaining justice. Today, the special status of immunity enjoyed by foreign diplomats or military personnel at overseas bases causes the very same social conflicts. 2,000 years ago, complaining to the authorities about a drunken legionnaire was like complaining to a deaf concrete wall. A unique and fascinating point of contact has always been strange religious cults and local beliefs. How did the classical Roman gods coexist with the gloomy local forest spirits in the filthy border settlements? The Romans were incredibly pragmatic when it came to religion and readily adopted foreign gods for additional mystical protection. Soldiers dutifully erected altars both to their majestic Jupiter and to local horned deities just in case. A modern, anxious person buys expensive insurance against every conceivable type of damage to feel completely safe. An ancient soldier did exactly the same thing, generously sacrificing live rams to as many different gods as possible. Wealthy legionnaires often hired poor locals to perform the dirtiest and most humiliating household chores. Why should an elite, proud warrior spend time scrubbing his own filthy boots when his purse jingles with silver? Soldiers pooled their pay and hired starving boy slaves or the local poor for daily laundry and cleaning. This certainly created jobs, though it also fostered a very specific service economy around the arrogant camp. Any wealthy foreign diaspora in a poor country is instantly surrounded by incredibly cheap and submissive local servants. Roman infantrymen genuinely felt like true aristocrats, striding imposingly through the muddy streets of provincial markets. The rare days off were always the most coveted and anticipated time for absolutely every legionnaire. How could a weary soldier get a perfectly legitimate day off to have a good time in the neighboring seedy town? There were no official days off in the Roman army, so absolutely everything depended on personal relations with the centurion. For excellent, impeccable service or a hefty silver bribe, one could obtain the coveted pass to leave the city walls for a few days. Today's crafty students beg the dorm supervisor just as tearfully for permission to come back after midnight. Only in ancient Rome, the price of the slightest mistake was measured in bloody lashes, not just a boring reprimand from the dean. When the mighty legion finally departed for a real war, the bustling cantons often emptied out and fell into complete economic ruin. Why did these thriving, wealthy trading towns turn into eerie ghost towns so incredibly quickly? Their entire bustling economy and physical security depended entirely on the fat wallets and sharp swords of the departed legionnaires. Weeping women were left alone, disheartened merchants packed up their tents, and the inflated economic bubble burst instantly. Today, the sudden closure of a large automobile plant in a small single-industry town inevitably leads to exactly the same tragic consequences. The ancient world was utterly cynical. No legion nearby, no easy money, no love, no normal life at all. The greatest threat to the entire Roman Empire was, in fact, the completely non-aggressive hordes of barbarians on the borders. What could possibly be more terrifying for a powerful state than a brutal armed enemy right at the city gates? It is an incredibly bored, well-fed, and stagnant army with absolutely nowhere to channel its colossal physical energy. History clearly shows that legions stationed too long in quiet, peaceful provinces began to deteriorate incredibly quickly. Any experienced modern sports coach will tell you right away that without constant competition, any team loses its form very quickly. Rome's shrewd generals understood this better than anyone, which is why they were absolutely terrified of a long and complacent peace. Endless boredom forced strong soldiers to invent their own forms of entertainment, which very often ended in real tragedy. What does a massive surplus of free time inevitably lead to for people professionally trained in maximum violence? Massive bloody brawls regularly broke out in the camps, unbridled drunkenness flourished, and military discipline plummeted to a critical low. Out of boredom, soldiers began to brutally terrorize the peaceful local population simply for the sake of entertainment or banal extortion. If you lock 50 aggressive teenagers in a single room for a long time, the end result will be just as disastrous. Only the Roman adolescents had massive shields, sharp iron swords, and a complete sense of impunity. The lofty political ambitions of certain generals always found the most fertile ground precisely among the bored legions. Why did loyal soldiers agree so alarmingly easily to march on their native Rome to kill their rightful emperor? Civil war always promised unpunished looting, huge monetary rewards, and a return to the heart of civilization from the wild forests. A rebellious, cunning general simply promised to double their pay, and the legion would hoist him onto their shields with great joy. Today, politicians buy the votes of gullible voters with sweet promises to lower taxes and significantly raise pensions. In the harsh ancient world, election campaigns always took place with drawn swords and the severed heads of unsuccessful political rivals. To combat this degradation in any way, the command regularly imposed punishments that were utterly absurd in their cruelty. How, in general, does one keep a gigantic killing machine in line when it has completely forgotten why it was needed in the first place? The slightest offense was punished by a brutal public flogging with a heavy vine, which every centurion carried at all times. If a unit showed the slightest cowardice or rebelled, decimation was applied, the gruesome execution of every 10th soldier by blind lot. In today's humane corporate world, you might simply be deprived of your annual bonus for very poor work on a project. Roman top management genuinely preferred to stone bad employees to death in front of the entire terrified team. Sports and brutal physical competitions were always the only legal way to let off steam in an overcrowded camp. Why did strong soldiers need sports when they were already working themselves to the bone every day on construction sites and in the fields? Commanders regularly organized brutal no-holds-barred fistfights, dangerous races, and gladiatorial duels with heavy wooden swords. This effectively channeled pent-up aggression into a controlled outlet and provided excellent entertainment for the huge crowd of screaming spectators. Today, wardens of strict prisons often organize soccer matches for aggressive inmates for the very same psychological reason. Throughout history, sports have been the best outlet for releasing dangerous tension within closed male communities. The constant movement of troops from one remote province to another was another proven method of combating stagnation. Why was the logistically nightmarish redeployment of an entire massive legion considered a very good idea in absolutely peaceful times? A sudden change in climate, new aggressive neighbors, and new complex challenges instantly pulled the complacent soldiers out of their comfort zone. They tearfully left their familiar surroundings and warm beds behind and marched with great difficulty for months on end into the absolute unknown. Modern global multinational companies very often rotate top managers regularly between different countries. This effectively prevents corruption and ensures people never forget who is actually paying their salaries. Some desperate legions found their only salvation in mystical religions and dark secret cults. How did strange, mystical Eastern beliefs so easily capture the minds of incredibly pragmatic and cynical Roman soldiers? The cult of the cruel god Mithras, which demanded strict discipline and terrifying secret initiations, became incredibly popular throughout the army. Closed secret societies gave ordinary soldiers a pleasant sense of elitism and brotherhood, which they sorely lacked in their daily routine. Today, adult men often join exclusive elite clubs or fraternities in search of a special sense of purpose and useful connections. Roman soldiers would secretly descend into dark underground temples and bathe in the blood of a slain bull for the sake of those very same emotions. Sometimes the cunning army command deliberately provoked minor bloody conflicts with neighboring barbarians. Why did generals instigate border skirmishes if the Great Rome was officially in a state of deep peace? A small but extremely bloody operation was the best training for the slightly rusty giant military machine. The legionnaires returned to their home camp with trophies, having rediscovered the forgotten taste of blood and the incredible importance of iron discipline in battle. In our time, major countries regularly conduct large-scale military exercises with live-fire drills along their borders. The Romans sincerely considered routine exercises a waste of time if they didn't involve plundering someone in the process. The mental health of these hardened soldiers was never officially discussed, but the consequences of severe stress were always evident. What happened to the minds of people who lived for years on end in constant tension and endless, monotonous routine? Sources describe horrific cases of sudden madness, unprovoked aggression toward their own comrades, and strange suicides in quiet garrisons. In ancient times, psychologists simply did not exist, so any problems were resolved through flogging or transfer to another unit. Today we call this PTSD and severe depression, attempting to treat veterans with complex therapy and handfuls of antidepressants. Ancient doctors simply advised drinking more sour vinegar water and swinging a heavy wooden sword much more vigorously. It was precisely this endless and exhausting battle against boredom that forever shaped the unique character of the Roman army. Why did they go down in world history as the most methodical, calm, and incredibly effective warriors of their time? Because their legendary discipline was forged not at all during moments of epic battles to the sound of victory trumpets. It was born through hard work on gray, rainy days, when they had to silently clean up horse manure and dig through icy mud. Modern elite special forces know full well that glorious heroism lasts mere minutes, while the drudgery of routine takes years. Roman legionnaires were the first in the world to grasp this great truth, turning ordinary routine into their most formidable weapon. If you look closely at the lives of soldiers at a modern American base in Germany, you are bound to see ancient Rome. What has actually changed over these 2,000 years of continuous military evolution and technological development? Only the form has changed. Weapons now fire deadly lasers and bullets, and cold Coca-Cola is served for lunch in the mess hall. But the basic essence of military service remains the same: endless training, stifling bureaucracy, cleaning equipment, and battling mind-numbing boredom. Just as in ancient times, the modern soldier spends 90% of his time in dreary anticipation of a war that may never begin. The ancient Romans laid an incredibly solid foundation for military psychology, one that works flawlessly even in the age of smart drones. The vast Roman legion was not merely an army, but a unique social experiment in absolute control over thousands of people. How did they manage to hold half the known world without any internet, radio, or high-speed transportation? Their most important and fearsome weapon was not the fine steel of the gladius, but the perfect organization of their monotonous daily routine. They always defeated their enemies because they could dig deeper, build faster, and endure any routine longer than anyone else. Your boring modern workday in the office is the direct descendant of the Roman system of micromanagement and strict discipline. And to be honest, this is both deeply frightening and genuinely awe-inspiring at the same time, because human nature hasn't changed at all.